So we have a little something new for you guys today. This is the new Pico 4 VR headset and it certainly is really interesting. But before we dive right into it, we would just like to note that we don't usually do VR products, so our perspective is mainly from your average consumer looking to use VR for entertainment purposes. In that regard, what do we think of it? Well, if you want AR functions for whatever reason and you like being on the bleeding edge of XR tech without burning a gigantic hole in your pocket, the Pico 4 is honestly a worthy consideration. For those unaware, Pico is a Chinese company originally specializing in XR headsets for businesses. They then started targeting consumer audiences and were acquired by ByteDance last year. Recently, they've also started to expand into Asia markets as well, largely in part thanks to ByteDance, and that is why we have one here with us today. Thanks, Pico. So, here we have a company with a long history dealing in the XR space, and this Pico 4 is their newest in the lineup. How does the experience compare? Well, we actually have the Meta Quest 2 in the office as well, and we'll be drawing comparisons here and there while putting the Pico through its paces. Okay, enough chatter, let's get right into it, starting from the unboxing. The packaging generally feels very premium, and you get a headset, the controllers with the lanyards, and a USB-C cable for charging along with an adapter. You also get an extra flap for the nose area and a spacer for glasses. The design of the Pico is as you would expect from a VR headset. It's made of a plastic with a matte finish, but surprisingly you don't get the impression that it's cheaply made at all, which makes it very similar to the Quest 2. A good thing in our opinion. Being a mixed reality headset, the front is covered in glass for color pass-through, and this certainly makes the Pico 4 seem much more advanced compared to the Quest 2, as that doesn't have this function. On another note, just from a visual standpoint, you can definitely guess which precedes the other. The Pico 4 is also designed with its battery compartment at the back, so the weight is actually counterbalanced. However, it is slightly heavier than Quest 2 at about 586 grams or about 1.29 pounds. The adjustments, however, makes for a snug and comfortable fit. You don't feel the strain from playing long hours as compared to the Quest 2, where the weight is mostly packed at the front, which you can definitely feel the effects of, especially when you play games like Superhot, where you need to turn your head a lot. So despite the increase in weight, it's actually the much more comfortable headset of the two. The Pico is also designed to fit with glasses with a spacer if you need that additional gap, and in most cases, it does fit quite comfortably. Although if your go-to glasses are the kinds with thicker or larger rims, you might have a little trouble with it, so do take note. As for the controllers, it's designed to fit the contours of your grip, and generally we have no complaints with them. The rounded parts that go around the controllers do strike us a little bit odd at first, but after seeing one of our colleagues hit the headset while playing all-in-one sports, we definitely do now understand why the design is as so. Aside from that, you do get a USB-C port, but strangely enough, the Pico 4 doesn't have a 3.5mm jack. It might not be that big of a deal for everyone, but we definitely do still prefer to have options. Not to mention, if you play it tethered, you will likely be on it for longer periods, and you don't really want your audio cutting off halfway due to the lack of batteries and such. Which might be a sizable concern considering that the speakers aren't the best. It sounds hollow, lacking any clarity, and the exhaust fans of the Pico quickly overshadow the listening experience, but if you just want to hear what's happening instead of being immersed, it should suffice. But of course, again, it's not the best experience. Okay, before we actually fire this thing up and get into the experience, we might as well get the specs out of the way. The Pico 4 is powered by the Snapdragon XR2 chipset. On paper, the Pico 4 actually ages out the Quest 2 with a larger battery, higher resolution per eye, and support for color pass-through. The display also runs at either 72Hz or 90Hz. In our experience, the difference might not be noticeable unless you're paying very close attention in some scenes, or you're used to picking up various refresh rates. If you're the rare few who aren't that sensitive to differences in refresh rate, you might want to actually just keep it at 72Hz for slightly better battery life without much loss in actual performance. Despite having a higher resolution, however, the differences between the Pico 4 and the Quest 2 is unnoticeable to the naked eye. The Pico's 4 colors also seem slightly dialed up on the contrast, and there are currently no options to fine-tune it. To add on, spearing also occurs quite frequently, especially with black and darker colors, but after fiddling a bit for a bit, we got used to it. That's not to say that we are going to let this pointer pass, but for the price of the Pico 4, we think it's livable. Now you can also actually activate color pass-through with a tap on the right side of the Pico, allowing you to fully see your surroundings as you would without the headset. But the video feed isn't the best, with pretty heavy processing and noise artifacts. It's kind of like looking through an old monitor in a way, or perhaps think of it as looking at a world in 720p. In situations where you need to quickly look at your surroundings, however, especially when you're playing alone, it'll still work fine. Just don't expect crystal clear images. During a recent trip to Hawaii for the Snapdragon Summit, we also did actually get to try on the Meta Quest Pro. And based on first impressions alone, there's actually not much of a difference in video quality there as well. Now speaking about the setup and the OS, the setup itself is pretty straightforward. You have prompts that you can easily follow with video references to go along with it. You do, however, require a Pico account to access their ecosystem. Which, speaking of which, Pico OS 5.0 is pretty clean and well designed. Even for a first-time user, you can definitely find your way around by filling about the menu options. Occasionally, the UI does stutter, but it's not detrimental to the experience. The Pico Store also carries a plethora of apps and games for you to check out, although compared to the selection in the Quest 2, it certainly loses out by a mile. Standalone, we at least have titles like All-in-One Sports and Down the Rabbit Hole. But of course, if you want to play games outside the Pico Store like Beat Saber, your only hope is tethering to a PC for SteamVR via 5GHz Wi-Fi or a link cable. That being said, if you don't have good coverage for your Wi-Fi, you're not going to have a pleasant time as the frequent stuttering will be a major annoyance. Not only that, but the stream is also pushed out as a compressed video feed, so there will be a noticeable drop in fidelity compared to games and apps on the local library. Even if you have a link cable, you're not going to have much luck there either, as the Pico doesn't support DisplayPort output, so the video feed will still come in compressed. On the entertainment end, you can stream YouTube or Disney Plus and give yourself a cinematic experience within the comforts of your own home. Funnily enough, our fellow colleague Brian, who actually tested this Pico thoroughly, might have actually spent more time watching Andor on the Pico than actually playing games. He says it's that good. Unfortunately, even with a beefy 5300 mAh battery, the Pico 4 lasted just about 2.5 hours, with intermittent usage of all the previously mentioned scenarios. In comparison, the Quest 2 only has a 3640 mAh battery, and that lasts just about 2 hours. How those numbers work out will definitely depend on your individual use case, but honestly, considering that the Pico 4 has a pretty much larger battery, we were actually expecting 3 hours or 4 hours and even more, but 2.5 hours is the number here. So thus far, while there might be lots of ups and downs for the Pico 4, honestly, we are still pretty impressed. Certainly, there are a few minor points we wish could be better, but we are willing to close an eye simply because of the price. The Pico 4 starts at 499 Sing dollars and 599 Sing dollars for the 128GB and 256GB versions respectively. So, all in all, should you actually consider it, or should you go right out and buy it right now? Well, although it has a few drawbacks, with that asking price, the Pico 4 does place itself very affordably as compared to the Meta Quest 2 that costs right about 600 to 700 Sing dollars despite being released back in 2020. This makes the Pico 4 a much more worthy consideration if you can look past its flaws. Honestly, we just gotta say that Pico really isn't playing around. They know full well who they're up against, the current market for VR, and they know what is essential for potential users. So, if you are currently looking for a cheap entry point into VR, this is probably it. In any case, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below and we'll be sure to take a look at it. If you like what we do give this video a like and subscribe to us for more of such content. Don't forget to follow us on all our social channels such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and TikTok, and we'll see you in the next one. See ya!